Motorcycle accidents are unique in that, in a couple respects. One is that unfortunately they're oftentimes very severe because the motorcycle rider doesn't have the protection that another vehicle would have. And then the other thing is that there's oftentimes a presumption by a claims adjuster and or a jury that the motorcycle is at fault simply because they're a motorcycle. And so that can make these cases somewhat difficult to prosecute because there's this stereotype or this presumption that the motorcycle, must have been doing something wrong. But the reality is that the majority of motorcycle collisions are actually caused by the other driver. And the reason for that, as you might imagine, is that because it is more difficult to see a motorcycle. And so a lot of times the other motorist simply doesn't recognize that the motorcycle is near them or that the motorcycle is approaching, and will sometimes pull out in front of the motorcycle or change lanes into the motorcycle because it's just not as noticeable as another passenger vehicle. And so motorcycle collisions can be challenging to investigate, and that's because a lot of times the physical evidence is different, and it can be difficult to pinpoint fault in these collisions a lot of times because you don't have the dynamics involved that you would typically have involved if there was two passenger vehicles. So the physical evidence at the scene will be different. Paint transfer and or the impact on the various vehicles will be different than if it was two passenger vehicles. A lot of times too, motorcycle collisions are difficult to investigate because the motorcyclists themselves, unfortunately, is oftentimes not able to give a statement at the scene because they're taken to the hospital. Because motorcycle collisions are oftentimes very severe because the motorcyclist doesn't have the protection that people do if they're in a passenger vehicle. So when should you contact an attorney after a motorcycle collision? You should contact an attorney as soon as possible. And one, obviously, who is experienced in investigating and prosecuting motorcycle collisions. Why? Because it's so important that that attorney secure the evidence that's available and get the download from the vehicle and or any cameras that may be on the motorcycle. Because if fault is disputed in the case, it's going to be very important that you have that data to make sure that you can prevail on your claim as far as who's at fault in the collision. And so if you don't get an attorney involved right away, and that vehicle, the passenger vehicle, for instance, which may not be, harmed that badly, might start, be put back into service and be driving down the road and will overwrite or erase all of the data that's on that electronic control module or the black box, so to speak. And so if that data is erased, there's no way to get it back. And so that's why it's so important that you get somebody involved as soon as possible.